Welcome to the 201 Fast Break podcast. I'm here alongside Dan Urda. A lot of exciting things on the docket to talk about this week, but first we have some breaking news in the NFL as Trent Richardson was traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a first-round pick. Dan, this is the kind of thing we never really see in the NFL, in-season trades. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's very, very interesting. The only thing it reminds me of at all is when Washington and Denver traded Clinton Portis straight up for Champ Bailey. That's the only time I can remember such a significant player traded. I think that was a couple weeks before the season started. It could have been mid-season.
Yeah, I believe it was actually a few weeks in. We had that is the big example of the player-on-player thing. We saw the Brandon Lloyd trade to the Rams for a very low draft pick. I think it was a 6th-round pick the 1 year. And that's pretty much it. This isn't something that happens ever, and it's just crazy. Trent Richardson, a guy that was a 4th overall pick just 2 years ago, or in 2 drafts ago, and now the new Browns management's coming in, and they're getting rid of him for the what's probably going to be a mid-first rounder.
Yeah, well, that's exactly it. Trent Richardson is not their guy. The guys who are running the team now did not make the pick, and I think that they understand that as good as Trent Richardson might be, which, by the way, he's averaged 3.5 yards per carry in his career so far. So even though he clearly has talent, he's yet to show anything yet on the field. But the team knows that you can find a running back in the late rounds. So they're picking up a second first-round pick next year. Now, they saw in the first 2 games, Brandon Weeden is not the answer. They gave him an off-season and a couple games to get better. He's not getting better. He's not going to play. He's not going to be good. So instead of having Trent Richardson on the team and winning a couple games on his own and ending up with a mid-round pick, I think we talked about the Sixers in the first podcast. Now they're in full tank mode. I think they're becoming the Sixers of the NFL.
That's pretty much a 2-horse race at this point between the Jags and the Browns as to who will have that worst overall record. And luckily for both of them, there's 2 kind of premier players that people are shooting for in Bridgewater and Clowney. So, yeah, maybe they're going for Bridgewater. They want that long-term answer at quarterback, and they've realized, as most people have already realized, that Brandon Weeden is not that answer.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to either go for him, or if they don't finish number 1 with number 1 overall pick, maybe if someone like Taj Boyd, Mariota out of Oregon, someone like that, and then they're going to have that other pick probably around 20 or so, because the Colts are going to be pretty decent. They might get another playmaking receiver there. Their defense is already really good as it is. So if you do this, you go into next year with your same defense that's not bad at all, a quarterback, a star wide receiver, and you still have Josh Gordon. That's the makings of a pretty good team.
Yeah, it's pretty much all boils down to the quarterback position for them. So bad news for people that had Cleveland over in futures before the season because they're pretty much tanking. What about from the Colts' perspective?
Well, we talked about this before we went on the air, that this is a Irsay move, 100%. He likes old school football. He likes to have the power back. He reunites Andrew Luck with the power back. He had Toby Gerhardt as his running back in college a lot, and he seems to have always played well with a big bruising body as his running back. And I mean, the Colts' lack of a run game was certainly affected him. You saw they almost lost to the Raiders. They looked really bad last week in the loss to the Dolphins. And now that they have a guy who they think is a dependable running back, they think that might be able to open things up on the offensive side. They're doing the opposite of the Browns. They're in win-now mode.
Yeah, mortgaging the future, certainly. They're losing their first-round pick in next season's draft, which they probably need to help bolster that defense, which is among one of the NFL's worst units. As for Trent Richardson, this is kind of going to be the final referendum on him. The knock all these years, as you mentioned, is he hasn't really shown too much at the NFL level, but then his supporters have come back and said that people just stack the box against him because he's never had a solid quarterback to play with. So with Andrew Luck now able to do the things he can do in the passing game, this is really going to show people whether or not Trent Richardson is a elite running back at the NFL level.
Yeah, and he's absolutely shown flashes of the talent that it takes to be an elite back. I didn't mean to be insulting him when I said that he only averages 3.5 yards per carry, because you're right, they were stacking the box against him a lot. Now he's a very good blocker. He can catch passes in the backfield too, and he could be very good for them.
Yeah, and that offensive unit should be clicking on all cylinders, and certainly push all your chips into the middle of the table move by Irsay and the Colts. I think ultimately it's just that defense is going to be the thing that holds them back this season to true contention. So, breaking news in the NFL, exciting afternoon here on September the 18th. Probably be one of the first podcasts to talk about this. But
funny thing is, if they put this off for another hour, I would have given out a bad pick, because I had written down on my list of picks this week the Browns plus 5.5, and a couple of minutes before I came over here to film this podcast, we saw the trade and had to cross that one off real quick.
Yeah, the Browns are certainly not a team a lot of people are going to be backing this week, and we saw the line already moved up to 6, and it may move even further based on what happens with the Browns running back situation. Already reports of them possibly signing Willis McGahee, so by the time this is posted, we might know more on that. But speaking of your picks, big week 2 for you. You went 3-1. The lone loss being, of course,
the Detroit Lions,
which you said was your square pick, but you liked it anyway.
You know what? The Detroit Lions did the worst thing any football team could ever do. They did the old 4th and 4 3-yard pass after calling a timeout and having all the time to design a play.
Yeah, just over a minute left. They're around midfield, and they were driving to get the game ahead, the go-ahead touchdown down 4, and called the timeout, as you mentioned, and they found Burleson, but for 3 yards out, and our man Honey Badger came up, made the game-winning tackle, and not that they would have scored, but that ended the game.
If only they had another receiver who could maybe catch a pass a little bit more than 3 yards. Are there any other receivers on the Lions who you think could have handled a throw like that?
They had a guy that had 6 for 116 and 2 touchdowns.
Was it Ryan Broyles?
It wasn't Ryan Broyles. His legs still acting up. It was actually a man they called Megatron. He had a big game. They talked about Patrick Peterson being able to cover him one-on-one. The Cardinals did before the game, but that clearly wasn't the case, as he torched him for a huge 72-yard touchdown pass early in the first half, and then added another touchdown right before halftime. So, what did you see as far as the pick not panning out? Was it just a matter of this is one of those things that can go either way, or were your initial feelings wrong after the game played out?
Well, a couple of things. First off, Reggie Bush got hurt, and he is an integral part of that offense right now. I'm not blaming it all on the injury, though. It's always rough picking up. I do think the Lions are a better team than the Cardinals, but they're on the road. It's always rough picking road teams. And I definitely think it came down to the point where the Lions were covering most of the game, and the Cardinals played well, took the lead, and just came back to one of those things where it could have gone either way. And unfortunately, that one did not fall in my favor.
No, it didn't, but 3 other picks last week did. So that's the only one you lost last week. Moving on to one of your 3 winners, you had the Redskins and the Packers over 49.5, and that was pretty much played the script, as you described. The Packers offense was able to do whatever they wanted against what looks to be a really putrid Redskins defense. And then the Redskins piled up some points in garbage time, just as they did in Week 1 against the Eagles.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, you're going to see something very similar to this in my picks for this week. As long as the Redskins keep following the script, I'm just going to keep on betting their overs, because their defense is terrible. I trust any competent quarterback. Like maybe if they're playing the Browns or something, I would stay away. But Matthew Stafford, who we play this week, is a competent quarterback. Any guy like that's just going to throw all over him, and then, with the NFL way of playing, when you play prevent defense, when you're up big, they're going to get their garbage time points to send the game over.
The thing is, I think that they haven't even really hit the ceiling for these overs, because the Redskins offense hasn't put it all together yet.
Right.
So I feel like once they kind of get things underway and RG3 gets his feet under him a little bit, he's still shaking off the rust from that long layoff following the knee injury, then we're going to see more competitive games from them, and then not only is their offense going to start putting up more points, but the opposing offense is going to have to keep their foot down the whole time and not kind of tail off in the second half. Yeah,
there's a bunch of teams in the NFL right now who I just will never bet an under for. And I don't like to bet unders in general, because try watching an NFL game with money on the under. It's one of the least fun things you could do in your life.
Yeah.
But especially the Redskins, I think they're going to keep on being high-scoring games, and eventually the spreads are going to have to be in the 50s. But until they are, I'm going to keep on going to this well.
And it worked out in Week 2 for you. So the second victory for you last week was your Buffalo Bills. You took +3, and you said on the podcast that they could even win outright, and sure enough, they went ahead and had a 1-point victory over the Panthers, 24-23. What happened there then that led you to about that pick?
You saw it was a very close game throughout, which I did expect, which is why I took the home underdog. But you know what? If I'm going to say that Lions game could have gone either way, and I fill up on the short side, I got to say the exact same thing for this game. E.J. Manuel threw what looked like a game-ending interception that was called back due to a penalty, and then it came down to one final play with seconds left on the clock, and they were able to convert because apparently no one realized that Steve Johnson was on the field. But I won that one, and I lost the other one. They were both toss-ups, so, you know, some of the games that can go either way. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and I went 1-1 on those.
Yeah, we talked about on previous podcasts that good bettors only want to get 60% of the games, and that's because there's so much parity in the NFL. It can go either way any given week.
One thing I did call right on the dot with this game is the Panthers aren't good.
No, their offense is all out of sorts, and they're trying to make Cam Newton a pocket passer. I know we talked about this before when we discussed the Panthers-Bills game going into it. But they need to get back to having him run the ball and doing some read option stuff, because what they're doing offensively right now isn't working for them.
Have they had a receiver other than Steve Smith on the team for the last 4 years?
Wide receiver now, Greg Olsen is.
Greg Olsen's solid. He's very solid.
A nice, solid receiving tight end for them. But no, they've tried Brandon LaFell, and it just doesn't seem like he's the answer. One other thing I did want to point out, it's something Bill Barnwell always harps on Grantland, but for what I think is the second week in a row, Ron Rivera had a 4th and 1 with less than 2 minutes left, and if he just went for it, the Panthers would have been able to run out the clock and win the game by 3.
Cam Newton could have fallen forward for 1 yard.
Yeah, I think he cited some stat where Cam Newton is something like 22 for 23 in those kind of situations. So you're all but certain to get that first down and be able to run out the clock, but instead Rivera does the ultra-conservative thing, kicks the field goal to go up 6.
Can't play not to lose.
But it gives the Bills the ball back, and then they went on to get the game-winning drive. So it would have been a push for you if they had done what most people would think is the statistically smart thing to do.
Get the first down and kneel the rest of the game.
Yep, but instead...
could have been a win, could have been a loss, and it could have been a push.
Yeah, a lot of different ways that could have turned out. So for the final Week 2 pick that was also a win for you, you had your moneyline parlay between Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Houston. Atlanta and Cincinnati both pretty much dominated those games. The Cincinnati was a close, low-scoring game, but it seemed like they were in control against Pittsburgh the whole way. Whereas Atlanta jumped out to a huge early lead behind Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and kind of let the Rams back into it, but it wasn't really a situation where you felt that they were in jeopardy of losing that game. The big one that almost cost it for you was the Houston Texans against the Tennessee Titans. Were you sweating that one at all?
I was sweating that one. I think the Titans are good.
They have looked pretty good. They won the Week 1 game against admittedly poor Pittsburgh Steelers team, but then fighting Houston like they did on the road, that really showed me something in Week 2.
Yeah, and that was a very entertaining game to watch, especially watching Randy Bullock kick 4 field goals in a row as time expired in regulation, ultimately going into overtime. But yeah, that was one of those when you miss on all of those attempts, you think, oh man, that's going to turn the momentum of the game. Now they're going to lose. But luckily, DeAndre Hopkins stepped up, had his best game as a pro, showed that he is a force to be reckoned with, and if they can only get Andre Johnson healthy, that might be a dominant 1-2 combo.
Yeah, he looked big after Andre Johnson left the game with the apparent injury, and he really stepped up. He had a huge touchdown in overtime. But getting back to that Randy Bullock thing, in case anybody missed it, Titans coach iced the kicker. The old ice the kicker called the timeout on the first attempt.
When he made the first one.
So he looked like a genius for icing the kicker. The second one, the Titans defense actually blocked the punt, but there was a penalty on the play, so they moved up 5 yards and got another crack at it. And then he iced it again. Because a play had happened, he was able to call another timeout, and this time it was a miss, so now he looks like an idiot for calling a timeout when what would have been a miss. And then his fourth and final attempt clanked right off the left upright. Couldn't have been more dead center onto that upright, bounced straight back. just one of the crazier sequences you'll see in the NFL. And
I'd really like to see an anti-icing the kicker rule put into play. It's just so stupid.
it really is. It's annoying.
It's a coin flip. If there's no better chance he's going to make it before or after. Like maybe he misses the first one, makes the second. Maybe he misses both. Maybe he makes both. You never know.
Yeah, maybe something where if they're in a kicking formation, you can't call a timeout with less than 5 seconds left on the play clock. There's got to be something they can do. It's really a disservice to the fans that this kind of it's almost farcical at this point that they continue to do this. So 3-1 week 2, feeling good about that. You're now 5-2 on the season.
5-2 on the season. Still can't get a big head about it though. So many more games to go this year. It's a good start, but you got to keep it going.
Yeah, and I mean we will mention you did lose your college parlay.
I warned everybody against those college parlays. They're for fun.
Yeah, we might
mix that from the segment.
We might not give that advice out anymore because we'll stick to the NFL where you're over 70% winner at this point. And
I actually know the names of players on the teams that I'm advising people to bet on.
Yeah, that always helps. So keeping that in mind with your NFL picks, what do you have for us for week 3?
Well, the first thing, I'll go back to what I started saying earlier. We got the Lions at the Redskins. I'm going to take the over 48.5. We pretty much discussed this already. The Redskins' defense is terrible. Offense has not been in sync, but in the second half, they've been able to get some garbage time points with the prevent defense, and I kind of even think that's going to end. They're going to get better on offense. They're going to score more in the first half. Detroit doesn't have a great secondary. It's going to be another shootout, I think.
I completely agree with that assessment. Redskins' defense, we discussed it. They're in shambles right now. I think that the Detroit passing attack is just going to have a field day with them. There's no way they can hold Calvin Johnson back from doing pretty much what he did last week in their loss to Arizona. And then the Detroit defense itself they have a good defensive line, but their secondary is very vulnerable. I would expect RG3 to maybe find his groove a little bit in the passing game, and it just 48.5 just seems too low. I think both teams are going to get in the 20s in their sleep, and then one team in the 30s. That's an easy cover for you.
That's how I see it playing out.
All right, so that's one pick. You have the Detroit-Washington game over 48.5. Your next one, I believe you mentioned, was the Miami Dolphins -1 at home against the Falcons.
And this is a pick I did not see myself making a couple weeks ago, but I'm finally coming around on the Dolphins and believing in them. First off, they're at home, which is often a great equalizer. The defense looks phenomenal. We talked last week about Cameron Wake and how good he is, but really they don't have many holes at all on that entire defense. Ryan Tannehill looks to have taken a big step forward on offense, and Mike Wallace got enough targets that he's not complaining this week, and everything just looks good for their offense, whereas Atlanta has a lot of injury problems right now.
They sure do. They got Roddy White, who's been banged up all season, and he's been trying to play his way through it. Julio Jones had that. He was on the injury report, but it didn't look like that really bothered him as he had a huge week too. But now Steven Jackson, he's out. He's officially out for week 3. He's out for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, they're saying. And some form of Jacquizz Rodgers, Jason Snelling combination in the backfield is going to be the replacement for him. So neither of those guys kind of the complete running back that Steven Jackson is, and they're just going to have to try to get by without him at this point. But do you think that, I mean, you mentioned Cameron Wake, do you think the Miami Dolphins defense is going to be able to stop that passing attack that is so prolific for Atlanta?
Well, Roddy White has pretty much been a decoy. He's almost admitted that in his interviews. He's on the field because you have to pay attention to him when he's on the field. You can't just let him go. But he's not at full strength. I don't think he's going to be at full strength for a couple more weeks. Julio Jones is a beast, but you can bet against teams with one weapon.
All right, so the Dolphins, you've pretty much come full circle, pulled a 180 on in the first 2 weeks you were talking about.
Which means they're going to lose by 21 this week.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm completely sold on the Dolphins yet, but if, as you predict, they go ahead and they beat the Falcons this week, I guess I'll be one of the last ones on that bandwagon.
One more thing, like even in the mental state, they see the Patriots are 2-0, but the Dolphins see the way they've played. And they've got to think, wait a minute, if we keep playing the way we're playing, and we keep going, we might be able to surprise the world and win this division. And football's a very emotional game. You get that kind of confidence in people. I think it makes them step up their game a little bit.
Yeah, but New England certainly looks vulnerable, and if they're doing any kind of standings watching as you're describing, then they should. It definitely is there for the taking. New England is not the dominant team we've come to expect in years past. So, 10-6 record from the Dolphins, that might be good enough to take the division, and it looks like they could be able to do that the way they've been playing so far. So third pick for you, as you mentioned offline, was the Chicago Bears minus 2.5 at Pittsburgh. And after watching the Steelers' performance not only Monday night but also Week 1 in their loss to Tennessee, I gotta say I agree with you on this one. What are your thoughts?
Here's a really, really intricate write-up for you. Steelers suck.
Yeah.
They're still getting a little bit of value because they're the Steelers, and people have it in their minds that the Steelers are a good franchise, are bound to turn it around. Mike Tomlin will find a way, the defense will find a way, but that team is so out of sync, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, they're certainly getting some name brand value, I think, at this point, because if it was anyone else, they wouldn't be only 2.5-point dogs the way they've looked the first couple weeks of the season. There are already a lot of questions swirling about how capable Todd Haley is as an offensive coordinator, and they had injury to their best offensive lineman. Obviously, also Le'Veon Bell was injured.
Not just their best offensive lineman, it's their center. And the center is a position that really, the Eagles lost their center last year, and you could just tell quarterback's chemistry with the center is an underrated thing you don't think about being a big deal. I think it's a very big deal.
Yeah, the center affects the passing game more than any other lineman in that sense, as well as being an integral part of the run blocking. So with Pouncey out and Le'Veon Bell, who's expected to be the bell cow for them, the running game is just awful at this point. And then,
was that pun intended there, or did that just happen when you said he's intended to be the bell cow?
Oh no, I didn't even catch that. Yeah, that could be the headline once he comes back and has a good game for them. We'll keep that one in mind. But also the pass protection is just not there for Ben, as it's been a problem in recent years. So the offense just looks awful at this point. The defense has played okay. They're doing their best to keep the team in games, but in today's NFL, you need a prolific offense to come ahead with wins, and Chicago has looked good in their first few games.
They have, and it's not easy for any offensive unit to play at Heinz in Pittsburgh, and that scares me a little bit. I just think Pittsburgh is that bad. I think they have no offensive line. They could the Bears could very easily score a defensive touchdown on a pick-6 return or a fumble. I just don't think that the Steelers should be 2.5-point dogs to a competent team right now. They should be more. If you're telling me that a field goal game for the Bears wins it, I'll take that any day.
Yeah, I have to agree with this one. Chicago just seems out and out the better team right now. So the final selection for Week 3 is a 3-team 10-point teaser, taking all the huge favorites and bringing those lines down this week. So we have Seattle coming down to minus 9.5, San Fran coming down to a pick'em, and Denver coming down to a 5.5-point favorite after the 10 points. So what is your thinking with this 3-team teaser?
I mean, it's very chalky, and a lot of, especially professional bettors and sharp bettors, cannot stand chalk, especially when you're already taking 10 points off the spread and you still have to lay 9.5. But if you look at the teams and look at their opponents, yeah, the Indianapolis Colts now have a running back, but I definitely think that San Fran at home is going to want to come back after that really poor showing in Seattle on Sunday. Speaking of Seattle, it almost is a spot that would worry me because they play Houston next week, and they're going to have the mindset that they're going to destroy Jacksonville. And sometimes when you come into a game with that mindset, you end up struggling.
The proverbial trap game.
Yes, exactly. But how's Jacksonville even going to score points?
I'm not sure. Their quarterback situation is it's up in the air at this point. Are they going back with Penny? Are they going with is Gabbard back this week? I don't even think it matters. It's just such a terrible quarterbacking situation.
The only chance they'd have is if they signed Tim Tebow.
Touchdown Jesus himself. They actually had a group of fans ticketing the organization to sign Tebow, but I don't think they're going to do that, regardless of how much it might help ticket sales. And then Jones-Drew might be out this week, so a team that has scored only one offensive touchdown this season is probably without their starting running back and starting quarterback, and the starting quarterback isn't even that good to begin with. So
their one offensive touchdown was scored by
former Eagle, wasn't it?
Correct.
Clay Harbor?
Clay Harbor.
Yes.
The lone member of the Jacksonville offense who scored a touchdown.
And they were the last NFL team to score a touchdown this season. So after watching that Seattle defense just absolutely dominate a pretty talented San Fran offense, yeah, you're right. How are they even going to get 10 points in this game?
Seattle might struggle. They may be a little sluggish too, but yeah. I mean, if Seattle plays terrible, they sleepwalk. They could win the game 17-6.
Yeah, and they're at home. They just set the Guinness Book of World Records for loudest stadium. I don't think that the Jacksonville offense this is the place for them to get things going. So, yeah, Seattle minus 9.5. That's a lot of points to give up with as part of a 3-team teaser, but you got to predict a blowout. The 20-point spread is actually the second highest in the last 6 years, so that shows what Vegas thinks of this matchup. San Francisco comes down to a pick'em. I agree with that completely. The Indy defense is terrible, as we talked about earlier, and San Francisco's offense is just going to be out for revenge after that poor showing they had in Seattle. They're going to throw everything they have at them and look to get back into the winning ways. And then that San Francisco defense is still very talented, so they shouldn't have too much of a problem containing Luck and Richardson in that new look backfield. I mean, Colts are going to get their points, but
that's a game to consider the over for.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know if we haven't looked at what that over/under line is.
Nah, it didn't make the cut. It's just something to think about.
Yeah, something for you guys to ponder. And then finally, the third portion of that 3-team teaser, Denver minus 5.5. That's the Monday night game against the Raiders. And I mean, the Raiders won last week, but it was against Jacksonville.
Raiders have been a little bit surprising. They almost were 2-0.
It's true. They almost pulled it out in Week 1 against Indy.
But Denver's just rolling over everybody right now.
Yeah, the Raiders' defense is just not a strong unit to begin with, and then the way Peyton Manning looks right now, he might be playing better than he has at any point in his career. Ryan Clady is out for the season, unfortunately for them.
That's a big blow.
Yeah, their starting tackle. So Peyton Manning's blind side is going to be a little less strongly protected than it was previously. But, I just don't see any way that they don't move the ball consistently up and down the field. They got so many weapons with Thomas and Decker and Julius Thomas emerging, that, as well as Welker, the huge all-season acquisition. They just have no problem scoring, and the Raiders aren't. Terrell Pryor's come in, he's looked frisky, he's breaking off some nice runs, and Darren McFadden has had a little bit of a rejuvenated season, but they still don't have any passing game whatsoever, so I don't see how they could get into a shootout with Denver and keep up with them.
Yeah, I mean, even in the first week, Baltimore hung with them for a quarter or so, and their offense is just too dynamic. They'll pull away.
All right, so that concludes the 4 picks for this week. You had Detroit and Washington over 48.5, Miami minus 1 at home against the Falcons, the Bears giving 2.5 on the road against Pittsburgh, and a 3-team 10-point teaser with the Seahawks, 49ers, and Broncos.
I will be more than happy with another 3 in 1 week.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for, really, as you go throughout the season. Just keep piling those winning weeks up, and at the end of the year, you're going to see a nice chunk of change in your bankroll. So we're going to talk a little bit about something relevant to the betting world, which was the New Jersey sports betting law that was taken to federal appeals court, and actually they upheld a ruling that the state law instituted to legalize sports gambling in Jersey conflicts with federal law. So plans by the New Jersey state government to implement that have been nixed for the time being. And I know you really wanted to discuss this. It's something near and dear to your heart. So why don't you go ahead and give us your thoughts?
Well, if we did this yesterday, I probably would have talked for 2 hours straight about it because I was fuming. So yeah, it was New Jersey has been trying to get sports betting for a while. They already have all the casinos in Atlantic City, and if they could add sports betting to those, the revenue increase would be incredible. So Chris Christie's a big proponent for it. Everyone pretty much wants it. The government came down and said, no, you can't, because for some unknown reason, Nevada is the only state that's allowed to have it, and none others, other than I think Oregon and Delaware, you're allowed to do parlay cards.
Yeah, there's Oregon, Montana, and Delaware, 3 other states where you can do not out-and-out sports betting, but some variation of sports betting, and then obviously Nevada, and yeah, they were all grandfathered in because they offered something at the time that when this law was put into place.
This has always been an issue that's been like near and dear to my heart, because I love sports betting, not just making money and betting on games myself. I love the industry. I think it's incredibly interesting, incredibly fun. It's the one thing I've always been passionate about. And I can't move to Vegas. I have too much stuff here, too much family, I got a girlfriend, all that stuff. And I kind of, ever since I got my job out of college, kind of just been like trying to hold on to this until sports betting gets legalized. And then I want to make a move. I want to somehow get involved in the industry. And it seems like every time they take one step forward, they take another one back. And it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. This is supposed to be the land of the free in America, but I can't spend the money that I earn how I want to. It's a victimless crime. People make bets with other people who agree to make the bet, and if 2 people want to make that wager, it just completely bewilders me why a government entity has a right to say that that's not allowed.
And those people that would agree with you, they would also point out that people are still going to go ahead and gamble.
Yes.
It's just going to be through offshore betting sites or through illegal, we joke about the mafia, but it really...
Oh, there's organized crime involved in gambling, absolutely.
Organized crime involved in gambling. So they're just going to go to those sources to get their gambling fixed, rather than using a legalized, state-sanctioned organization, which would help funnel revenue into the state of New Jersey, which Lord knows they need it after Sandy and everything else that's been going on over there. And it would be a huge benefit for Atlantic City, which, the state of affairs over there is just really sad. You look at it was the jewel of the East Coast back in the early and mid 1900s, and now it's just not what it once was, and it's a little sad. And I think the sports betting industry being brought there would do a lot to help that.
Yeah, and if you think about, in general, in all of America, the economy's pretty crappy. Our nation is in trillions of dollars of debt. And if you think about it, if they legalized sports betting across the country, marijuana, and even prostitution, as long as it's organized and everyone's tested and stuff like that, that's a lot of that debt that would be cut into, as long as the government taxed it and took their cut, which they'd have a right to if they legalize stuff like that. Other countries have allowed it, and either the government takes that money and puts it towards the economy, or pimps, drug dealers, and bookies are going to take that money. So I'm a big fan. I know that's an ultra-liberal viewpoint towards everything, but these things are going to be done, so why not regulate them in a proper way and benefit the economy from it?
We're not going to touch the prostitution portion of that on
it works in Amsterdam.
The podcast. Yeah, I know there are some countries in Europe where it is legalized.
It's legalized and it's regulated. Everyone's tested, so you're not risking disease the way you are when you go to some seedy motel. Not that I've ever done that.
Of course not. There's some moral grounds. I don't think we're going to get into that here, but we have seen with marijuana that it's legal in many states now, and you can even go as far as saying the tobacco industry. It's something which people are fully aware is not good for them, but the state offers it to them. They put pretty strict taxes on it, and it's a huge revenue boost for the government. So they're doing the same thing now with marijuana, and those are physically harmful to people. Marijuana, jury's out on whether that's has any real detrimental effects, but certainly cigarette use does.
So there's alcohol. Alcohol is probably the most dangerous drug on the planet.
Yeah, not only for the physical harmful effects of the people, but you have the tangential effects as far as DUIs or anything related to what people do while they're under the influence. So, I mean, in that sense, sports betting just doesn't even seem to be in the same arena as far as harming individuals who take part in it. So I think we're in agreement that morally and in a bureaucratical standpoint, there's really no problem with it. I just think that it's something the government needs to step up and get on a federal level to get something changed, because they take it to at the state level. Yeah, they're right. By the books, you don't have the right to do this, so we got to go ahead and change the books.
Yeah, you know what? Because once they make that change, I'll actually be able to make all these bets that I talk about.
Right, because
these are all hypothetical.
Yeah, we can't bet right now.
This whole podcast is like assuming that the person listening is in Las Vegas.
Yeah, only people in Nevada are able to place bets. So, thanks to our Nevada listeners out there. we appreciate your support. Finally, our final segment of the podcast. Hopefully, it's a new weekly podcast section we can have. I'm going to call it our Outlet Pass section, where we get a little assist from our readers and listeners and some topics to bring up. We had one question this week from KMAC732, Real Palatnik, via Twitter. He asked us, if the Sixers end up with the second pick in the draft, who should they take? And I think this is a great question, because people are all about the rigging for Wiggins and, hey, we're going to be as bad as possible, we're going to get Andrew Wiggins. Even if everything works out and we have a worse record than the Bobcats and the Suns of the world, we still only have a 25% chance to get the number 1 overall pick. And we even only have about a 65% chance to get one of the top 3 picks. So nothing's written in stone with that. Everything has to break right for us to get the first overall pick, even if we're the worst team in the league. So there's probably a good chance that it's not going to be Wiggins, it's going to be somebody else. So who's a guy that you could see them taking with the second overall pick?
Well, I mean, I'll give you one cheat answer and then a real answer. The cheat answer is you package that second pick and the Hornets lottery pick and your first round pick in 2015 to whoever does get the first pick.
They are the Pelicans.
Excuse me, sorry.
Second time. I don't know how you can forget the proud team heritage of the Pelicans.
So much history there.
So much story, franchise. So many good memories of the Pelicans out on the court.
The Hornets are actually a completely different team now. So
yeah, the Hornets, not this season, but the following season, are the Charlotte Bobcats are going to go back and be the Charlotte Hornets, which I think we can all agree is best for the league, and maybe some those old school starter jackets will be back into the rotation, which everybody loved to wear.
Bring back Muggsy Bogues.
Muggsy Bogues, Glenn Rice, Lonzo Mourning, a lot of good memories with the Hornets name in Charlotte. But
that's like my cop-out answer. My real answer right now would be Jabari Parker.
Jabari Parker, freshman at Duke this season. He's a 6'8" wing. He's getting a lot of comparisons to Grant Hill, but even a little better shooter than Grant was coming out of college. He's a guy, he doesn't really have a weakness in his game. Not really above average athleticism like a Blake Griffin or LeBron, where he's just going to jump out of the building, but he does everything at an elite level, and certainly a guy that back before Wiggins reclassified into this draft class, everybody was talking about Jabari Parker as being the best overall guy and the biggest high school product since LeBron. So Wiggins came along and stole a lot of his thunder, but this is a situation where things are going to play out on the court this year at the college level. A lot of exciting prospects, stacked draft class. So I agree, Jabari Parker is certainly in the mix. A guy I want to throw out there is Julius Randle. He's a power forward for Kentucky this year, freshman, 6'9", 250.
Kentucky finally got a good player?
Yeah, it's been a while for them. I don't know what Calipari's been doing. He's just been laying back and not really hitting the recruiting trail hard. But no, yeah, he just reloads every season, and they're going to have another stacked roster this season. Actually, a guy that's on their squad now, Alex Poitras, another one of those top prospects that Kentucky always seems to turn out. He had a nice freshman campaign going into his sophomore season, and reports out of camp in Kentucky are that Julius Randle is just taking this guy to school. He's just working him on the blocks, and he just looks like he's at a whole another level when they're going head-to-head in practices. So Julius...
Funny thing is, that's the only time anyone in Kentucky ever actually goes to school.
Yeah, it's not the classroom. It's paintwork 101. They go to the Key Malajuan School of Dream Shapes. But yeah, Julius Randle has just been, by all accounts, working Poitras, and I think we're going to see a huge year from him at Kentucky. He's getting some Sean Kemp comparisons. He just has that super athleticism. He's a prototypical power forward. Personally, I think pairing him with Nerlens Noel, that would be a front court for the next decade for the team, and that would pretty much be unparalleled in the league if those guys both reach their potential.
That Sean Kemp comparisons, how many kids does he have?
None yet that I know of.
They project a lot in the future.
Yeah, there's some high projections. He has good WAR as far as his kids to mistress ratios.
Once you bump them up to the NBA kind of groupies, they expect the kids to come.
Yeah, no, obviously, just purely a athletic and on-court comparison to Sean Kemp. I don't know about any off-court activities for Julius Randle.
It should be fun with this pick and with the pick from the Pelicans.
The Pelicans, yes.
They should have two nice young prospects to work with.
Yeah, already have the two in Carter Williams and Noel.
Noel will be healthy for the first time, so that's a couple of years. This is going to be really exciting.
Yep, this is the plan Sam Hinkie's put into place. So
and Mike Lombardi has stolen.
We'll have to see how it works out for those Cleveland Browns. But yeah, exciting times. So obviously a lot of college ball will be played, and I'm sure other players will emerge, and the stuff will get ironed out in that sense. But Jabari Parker, your pick, Julius Randle, both certainly possible selections if we were to get the second overall pick in Philadelphia. So that concludes our third edition of the 2-on-1 Fast Break podcast. I would encourage people to tweet us or email us some questions for our Outlet Pass section next week. And thanks for listening.
Have a good one. Let's get them this week.